Hello and welcome back to another glorious episode of The Walk and Talk on this, the most glorious of all days in my winter calendar. What day is it? I hear you ask. It's not Christmas, is it? Are we early? Are we late? No, it's not Christmas, my friends. It's bloody Black Friday, isn't it? It's Black Friday, the one day of the year that I think it is socially acceptable to get absolutely no work done whatsoever in honour of finding the hottest bargains and making them yours. Now, just to caveat this intro before you think I'm just some kind of superficial consumerist, shopping generally in normal life really does not excite me. On any other day of the year, like I'm not really that bothered, okay? Honestly, unless I'm buying stuff for my dogs, I'm really not the kind of girl who gets excited by a shopping trip. Like shoes and handbags don't do it for me because obviously I spend my life in wellies anyway. I do not keep up with the latest fashion trends at all. I have no idea what is going on because I basically just judge outfits based on how warm they are, how waterproof they are, whether a tug toy will fit in the pocket or not. I mean, as an example, right, yesterday I was sat at the hairdresser's and I was just scrolling through coats online because my winter coat has seen better days. And I had two in my basket because there was a sale on, obviously. And I couldn't decide between them. And then I spotted the difference between the design of the pockets. And I immediately made my choice because one of them had the perfect pocket shape to clip a treat pouch onto. None of this like sideways zip up nonsense that means all the treats fall out. No, I'm a very basic bitch, right? Like I'm easily pleased. However, I am also old enough to hark from an era when Black Friday actually meant something spectacular. It was a sacred and hallowed day. It actually only lasted for 24 hours, as it should. But during those 24 hours, my lord, the gold you could accumulate if you knew what you were doing, it wasn't like it is today with these like Black Friday sales that start in August and Black Friday deals that are actually just like 5% off, 10% off, which is an even worse saving than just like your run of the mill summer sale. It was what it was truly meant to be, which was an absolute mosh pit of amazing savings for a very, very limited window of time. And so, in my mind, I still feel magical on Black Friday, even though in reality it is actually harder and harder to find yourself a good bargain these days. However, on that magical note, before we dive into this week's dog training topic, because if this is your first time here, you're probably wondering what the hell is happening. I thought we talked about dogs here. We do. But I want to make my own Black Friday offering known to you. And that is that today, if you are listening on release day, November 28th, and for the rest of this entire weekend, so from today until midnight on Sunday, this Sunday, UK time, all of my digital courses, guides, training packs, planners, all of that good stuff, they are all marked down by 25% on the website. So no matter what your training struggle is, you can go and you can find the solution for 25% off for 3 days only. And that is my Black Friday gift to you. ListenDogTraining.com. Go and have a look. There's recall training, new puppy packs, reactivity rehabilitation, an incredible engagement training program, if I do say so myself, and lots of other goodies as well. Anyway, right, I've got Black Friday out of my system. So let's get on with today's episode. So shout out at the top of this episode to Vintage Welsh Dragon on Instagram, who dropped this topic into my question box on my Instagram stories about a month or so ago when I asked you guys what you wanted to hear about on the podcast. And it was the topic of adaptive training, which I don't think I've ever directly really discussed in depth before. So I think it will be the perfect one for us to unpick together today because I think it opens up one of the most fascinating and misunderstood aspects of dog training, which is basically just how much our dog's genetic heritage influences their learning, their behavior, their motivation, all of that stuff, and how much of it comes down to just who they are as an individual. So let's look at what adaptive training is, what it actually means, how it differs from more one-size-fits-all approaches, and how you can start tailoring your training to your dog's breed and your dog's personality in a way that makes everything feel easier for you, more effective, and more enjoyable for you and your dog. Okay, so first of all, let's take a look at the broad brush approach that all dogs just learn the same way. And let's unpick that a bit. So, there can be a bit of an unspoken assumption that training, dog training, is universal, that if you've got your good method down, it should work for any dog. But really, that's a bit like saying all human beings on earth learn the same way, which in recent years, as the educational system and everything we know about learning is ever evolving, we're getting more and more familiar with the idea that that just isn't true at all, is it? Because if you're teaching a class of 10-year-olds and you've got one of them who's a budding artist, really creative, and one's an engineer in the making, like they're obsessed, one's an athlete, one's a really deep thinker, and you use one identical lesson plan for all of those children with absolutely no flex, no variation to cater to different needs, no preparedness to offer just little tweaks along the way, you would likely lose half the class as you went along, right? And the parents among us can probably all call to mind which of our kids' teachers seem to possess this incredible gift of creativity and flexibility and forward thinking, and which don't. Anyway, we are not here to bash the education system. We are here to talk about dogs. And dogs are just no different in this regard. The only difference is we have labels and ways to recognize the multitude of breeds with their rainbow of breed traits, all of which we have shaped so that we're actually even better equipped to work with these variations and adaptations to really, really get the best from the dog that's in front of us. Because our domestic dogs have been shaped by hundreds and hundreds of years of selective breeding for very specific traits: persistence, sensitivity, independence, sociability, focus, tenacity, like the list goes on and on. And those traits don't disappear when we bring them into our homes as domestic pets. They shape how our dogs learn, how they handle things like frustration, how easily they become aroused and over aroused, and the things that actually motivate them. So, really good adaptive training is about taking all of this knowledge that we have, taking it all on board. And the best approach I like to tell owners when it comes to this, right, is go in the order of species, then breed, and then individual. So, the most important thing for you to understand and know about your dog is that he is a dog. Mic drop. We do the big stuff on this podcast. So that sounds obvious, but bear with me, because the second most important thing about your dog, aside from the fact that he is a dog and not a person and not a cat, is his breed. But then the third most important thing, which is still incredibly important, is your dog is a unique individual with his own personality as well. So you really have to look at the learner in front of you, not just the breed standard, not the coverall dog training textbook that you just bought at Waterstones, but the living, breathing dog that you share your life with, and you know his quirks more than anybody else does. Okay? So first he's a dog, then he is his breed, and then he is his unique self, right? Or herself. So let's get a little bit nerdy for a moment, as is our want on this podcast, and talk about the brain and how drive and reinforcement work. So, the foundation of being able to train your dog anything is actually really simple. And that is that all behavior is driven by reinforcement. Behavior is reinforced, and that's what makes behavior happen. That is the fundamental, universal truth of animal training. But what counts as reinforcement varies enormously between breeds and obviously between individuals. So in the brain, reinforcement is mediated by dopamine, that chemical that says, oh, yes, please do that again, do that again. Now, different dogs have different dopaminergic profiles based on their genetics, their early life experiences, and breed selection, right? So, for example, let's look at your retrievers. So, they've been bred for cooperation and sociability. Their dopamine hits often come from human approval, food, and successful retrieval sequences, or parading and carrying, any kind of natural behavior that is to do with the retrieve. Terriers, they were bred for independence and persistence. They get that same dopamine kick from the act of pursuit itself, like the chase and the fight. So if you throw a toy for your terrier, uh, it's incredibly likely that he will run after it and shred it to pieces. But he's going to derive very little intrinsic joy from enthusiastically picking it up and returning it to you in the way that the retriever would. And then if we look at herding breeds, well, their dopamine system lights up when they can control movement in the environment. So behaviors like watching, stalking, eyeing, and even like specific formats of chasing can all be intrinsically reinforcing to them. So if we ask a terrier to calmly ignore movement, or a collie to stop fixating without offering any kind of alternative outlet for that, we are not just fighting behavior, we are fighting their brain chemistry. And adaptive training says, why don't we stop fighting it, and why don't we figure out how to use it? So now we can ask ourselves, how can we work with their natural drives to get out of frustration and conflict in our training experiences and into flow with our dogs and with their training? Well, we need to remember that every breed type was designed for a job, ultimately. Even our lap dogs were selectively bred for specific social or emotional traits. It's still a job, right? And when we try to suppress those instincts rather than channel them, that's when we start seeing problem behaviors that we can't really get rid of. So if we go back to your terrier who's obsessed with chasing leaves on the pavement, he isn't really being naughty. He's not just ignoring you because he's stubborn. He's showing you that his nervous system is absolutely wired for pursuit. So why don't we give him sanctioned chase and conflict outlets for that, like tug games, flirt pole play? We could set up scent work trails, perhaps, that like mimic the thrill of hunting. Your retriever, who gets overstimulated greeting every single human being on every single walk, is not trying to embarrass you. His brain is wired for social success. And you can channel that by giving him structured retrieve tasks, or teaching him to bring you items, which still satisfies that I am doing something for my person, I am pleasing the human, I am part of the team kind of impulse. And your herding breed, who stares or freezes or stalks other dogs at the park, isn't being rude. They are literally wired to control motion. So give her focus-based games and pattern work that build control, and replace that stalking with thinking before acting, maybe. Because when we adapt training to these patterns, we move dogs out of frustration and into flow, and they become calmer, they become more cooperative and more fulfilled. Not because we've fixed them, because we've solved their problem, but because we've aligned with who they really are. But here's where it gets a bit more interesting. I want you to remember still that your dog's breed gives us clues, but not hard and fast rules. Because while genetics load the gun, we also have environmental factors, learning, experiences, everything our dogs are exposed to, individual temperament, and all of that extra juice deciding whether that gun fires. You absolutely can have two Labradors, and one of them is high octane, toy driven, bouncing off the walls. And the other one could be really soft, really food motivated, but maybe really sensitive to just the tone of your voice when you speak to them. So it's the same breed, but you've got two wildly different learners there. Because really good adaptive training means looking first at the label. Yes, the breed, it's a retriever, but then looking beyond the label. So, of course, I want you to know the breed history for your dog. Get on Google. What purpose was he created for? I think that's really important for you to know that stuff, but then look closer. What actually motivates this dog? How does this dog in front of me recover from failure? Does this dog need pressure to perform? Do they need to be pushed? Or do they need me to back off? Do they need permission to just stop and think and process? What does arousal do to this dog's cognitive function? And when you answer those questions, breed, it then becomes a really helpful background track rather than the main melody, if you know what I mean. And you are so much more empowered to succeed with all of this extra stuff you're considering. And whilst I've talked about the dog in front of you a fair bit, I want you to think about what you bring to the whole equation too. And if you don't know, then from now on, bring this one thing. And that is a mindset of adaptability. And that means observing before acting, asking what the behavior means rather than just judging it instantly, customizing your reinforcement strategies to make them work for you, and respecting your dog's nervous system and emotional state at all times. The best trainers, the very best trainers, and the happiest owners are the ones who can flex. They don't cling desperately to a technique. They listen to feedback from the dog and they adjust and they move forward accordingly. For instance, if your collie disengages from food training, maybe food isn't his primary driver. Try using movement or try adding movement to the delivery of the food. Just try stuff, mix it up, get experimental. My dog, my little dog Albie, he is incredibly food motivated. He wasn't always mind, but I wanted him to be food motivated, so we trained that in and we built that. And I have a whole separate podcast episode that talks about that if that's something you're interested in. But I can either put the food straight in his mouth when we're training as his reward, or I can bowl it away from him and have him chase it. And I know which one of those two reward strategies holds higher value for him. You are not being inconsistent and messing things up by trying new things, making changes as you go along. You are being intelligent. And whilst we are here identifying as our most intelligent selves, let me just add a quick aside that's relevant here. So often I hear people labeling their dogs with negative traits, like they're stubborn, they've got no self-control, they're just choosing to ignore me on purpose, whatever it is. Whereas if we switch this up and apply a more intelligent behavioral lens to what our dogs are doing in these situations, so if we look at it from the perspective of genetic programming, which your dog did not choose or decide, by the way, suddenly the reality of what is happening in these scenarios shifts entirely. That stubborn terrier actually becomes persistent and determined. Those are qualities that we wanted in terriers, and they are qualities that you can use. That needy retriever is actually deeply social, which is an incredible trait for relationship-based training. So my dog Albie, he's a mix of a few breeds, and a lot of what is in there genetically is like lapdog, companion dog based, and then there's a 50% injection of poodle brain for good measure. So you could describe him as needy or clingy sometimes. Don't tell him, of course, that I told you that. But I actually describe him as incredibly socially motivated. So I love using food when it comes to teaching, but also this dog is so good at performative trick training because actually to him, the work itself is intrinsically rewarding because he's doing stuff with me. He's getting social feedback and interaction and engagement and relationship. And that is his favorite thing on earth. So when you stop fighting who your dog is and start understanding them, That's where the magic really happens. Another layer that I think often gets overlooked is the role of the nervous system in all of this, because breed tendencies don't just affect what dogs want to do, they influence how their nervous system functions as well. Some breeds are wired for super quick 0 to 10 arousal, rapid action. Think terriers, shepherds, sighthounds. It makes sense, right? Whereas others are wired for persistence and endurance, like your retrievers, gun dogs, lots of the working lines. And that's quite a different kind of energy for a dog to manage. So, when we talk about emotional regulation and self control, it's not necessarily fair to expect every breed to easily find calmness or to be able to disengage or down regulate at the same pace. And that's why your training plan needs to build in regulation strategies that suit your dog's natural physiology. So, terriers often benefit from intense short bursts of activity followed by time for decompression. Collies need structured control games that help them to really think in arousal. And Labradors might thrive on repetition and predictability to stay in that learning state. And when you get this right, training then becomes a much more therapeutic and much less stressful. So, okay, how do we boil all of this down into some tangible takeaways that are actually going to be useful to you? So, here are some ways that I think you can start thinking practically and adaptively in your own training sessions. So, number one, match your reinforcement to your dog's drive. So, does your dog light up for toys, food, scent, praise, movement? Just use that thing, whatever it is, modify, shift things. Don't just get annoyed about what you wished worked but doesn't work. Try something new that makes more sense and run with it. Number two, play to your dog's natural strengths. I know this sounds obvious, but let your retriever retrieve, let your terrier dig or play tug, let your spaniel sniff. When you build on that instinct, cooperation skyrockets. Number three, train for regulation, not suppression. So always remember when we're thinking about problem behaviors or what we as humans deem to be problematic to us, the goal isn't to eliminate your dog's drive. It's to teach your dog how to control it and redirect it. It's different, okay? And you'll have infinitely more success if you come at the problem from this angle. Number four, build in decompression. So, high drive dogs absolutely need regular off switch time. Scatter feeding, sniffy walks, calm environments, it's essential. It's not optional. So, build it into your routine wherever you can. And number five, finally, stay flexible. I think I've said it enough times in this podcast now. If something really isn't working, you don't necessarily need to just double down on it. Why not change your angle, mix up your reinforcement, modify your environment? There are so many ways that you can find success. So go and explore them. This is how great trainers think, because when you train adaptively, three things are going to happen for you. Okay. First of all, your dog will start succeeding faster because you are working with their nature, not against it. You will also start feeling calmer and more confident yourself because you will stop comparing your dog to other dogs and just laser focus on your own relationship, your unique partnership, and how that looks for you, no one else. Always remember, please, that comparison is the thief of all joy, okay? And finally, why did we all get a dog in the first place? Why are we sharing our houses with these creatures? Be more flexible, be more open to mixing things up, and your relationship with your dog will change. Not only change, it will improve dramatically because it can't not, right? When your dog feels understood, trust grows. You become a team rather than being adversaries. None of us got a dog so that we had someone to be perpetually angry at, did we? That's bonkers. And yet so many people just slip into that life without even noticing that it's happening, let alone taking any action steps to change that. So ultimately, I would love for you to take away this. I absolutely agree with adaptive training to breed type, but more than that, I definitely agree with adaptive training to the individual. Breed gives us the framework. Personality fills in the colors. And our job as trainers and owners is to learn how to read the whole painting, okay? Not just the basic outline. Your terrier and your lab, they might look completely different on paper, but they both deserve to be fully understood, fully celebrated, and trained in a way that brings out their brilliance because they are all brilliant. So, the next time you find yourself thinking, why the hell does this not work for my dog? Why is my dog broken? Pause and ask yourself instead, who is the dog in front of me? Like, who actually is this dog? What drives them? Who are they? What are they into? And when you can answer that, I promise you, you will make more leaps and bounds in progress than ever before. Okay, I hope you've enjoyed this week's episode. As always, if you did find it helpful or interesting or valuable in any way, I would love it if you took just 2 super quick seconds to leave me a review or share it on your Instagram stories. It's all totally free and super easy for you to do, but it makes such a difference in helping me to grow the podcast and helping me to help more people for free, totally free for you to listen to always. Also, don't forget, Black Friday sale is now live and kicking at listendogtraining.com. Big exciting savings available until midnight on Sunday, the 30th of November, UK time, because I'm in Old Blighty. So you've got 3 days from now to go and grab yourself a training plan for the new year, something to busy yourself with in January when all the hubbub of Christmas is over. You're wondering what to do with your life. But in the meantime, I shall leave you for now to enjoy the rest of your dog walk, and I will see you same time next week for another episode of The Walk and Talk.